My Knicks friends and family, what's popping with you? It is your man. It is your boy. And we're about to go ahead and get this thing started with another episode of Knicks Weekly. I got my man Andy up here in the chat, who is recovered from last night's episode. If you watched last night's episode, the last hour was explosive. You should probably go watch the last hour. And it wasn't even about the New York Knicks. You should go check that episode out. It's a good episode. It was funny. You know, we had people storming off the set and everything. Anyway, let me get my guy over here. Andy, what's going on with you, man? How you feeling?
Yo, what up, Sid? What up, Sam? What up to the chat? Yeah, like you said, man, rubbed off the dust, the burns from last night, so ready to roll tonight.
Yeah, man. It was a fun one. It was funny and it was fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Funny and it was fun. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, today, I'm gonna start off the show by listening to something from Ian Begley. And then from there, we're gonna get into just assuming that Tom Thibodeau is the coach. And if we can assume that Tom Thibodeau is the coach, does what Ian Begley is saying make sense as far as how Leon Rose plans to play? And you'll hear it. And if he's the coach, how do we proceed with bringing in more coaches? How will the players, the players that we have, what do you think he'll feel about the players that we have? Right? So that's what we're going to get into today. And then but specifically on Sportscaster, we're going to talk about what is your ideal offseason. So if you're not on Sportscaster, you need to join us on Sportscaster. You need to follow on Sportscaster because we have an entire NBK network where some of your favorite people that's here in the panel are doing shows all in one location. So you need to come check it out. But before we even get that started, man, let's just take a listen to Ian Begley and what he had to say. It's about a 2-minute video, not a video, 2-minute clip. And what he had to say about the New York Knicks and what the roster could look like or who might be playing on the floor. All right, so let's take a listen.
ESPN New York Tonight podcast with Larry Hardesty on 98.7 ESPN.
Yes, I know it's ESPN, guys.
We bring in one of my favorite guys, a guy who I was toiled side by side in the Knick locker room for a number of years when he was with ESPN. Now he is doing the same great work with SNY. He is Ian Begley, who covers the NBA and the Knicks and Nets locally. Ian Begley, welcome, my friend. How are you?
Larry, what's happening, man? How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Everybody safe at home?
Thank goodness, yes. How about you?
Everybody's safe. Thank you, sir. Begley, we got a lot to talk about. I want to talk about the bubble. I want to talk about Florida. I want to talk about the Nets, but I got to start with the Knicks, our old tag team group.
By the way, we had fun in that locker room.
We sure did. We probably had, well, the best time we had was trying to take bets on how long it would take Carmelo to come out. But we also had fun up at training camp because you were sparring with a number of the other reporters there. One day we'll just sit down, bring you in the studio, and we'll give people life as it is to be Ian Begley.
Listen, man, those spars with the writers are still happening today. So
are they really? They're probably worse now because they look at you differently. I'm sure they do.
Chat.
I can imagine. Beggs, the Knicks have 759 coaching candidates. When are they going to whittle it down to maybe 3?
Well, when is your interview? Are you going to interview?
No. I didn't make the first one. Listen, some have had 2 or 3 interviews. I didn't even get the first one, so I'm obviously not on the list.
So you know what they did, actually? I think everybody's actually gotten the same amount of interviews. What they did was they had like a 30-minute short intro conversation over Zoom with the candidates, and then they followed up and had a more formal conversation with the candidates, and I believe they're done. I think they finished, not late last week, maybe even today, but I think they are done with all the candidates that have been reported on. So I don't know if they're going to have another round of guys who would be quote-unquote finalists, but they have had their full conversations with everybody who has been reported as a candidate.
And the audience loves Mark Jackson and they love Jeff Van Gundy. And I didn't see either of their names mentioned as part of the folks who were in the running. And I know everybody's name has not been mentioned, but I did not see their names mentioned. Ian, it's interesting. These two guys don't seem, especially Mark Jackson, doesn't seem to be in the running for head coaching jobs lately.
I think he will be in the running for the net job. I think he and Tyronn Lue would be in the running over there. Maybe Jason Kidd. And I think Jason Kidd also, if Houston opens up, will be in the running there. But with Mark Jackson, I think he'll be in the running over there. My guess with the Knicks was, since they didn't view him as a serious candidate for the head coaching position, I don't think they wanted to maybe disrespect him by bringing him in for an interview for a job that they didn't really view him as a serious person for. And they probably didn't want to have the fan base get all excited knowing that, he wasn't a serious candidate. So probably to avoid all that, maybe the same thing with Jeff. They decided not to bring those two in for the formal interview process. But I do think Mark will be in the mix in Brooklyn because Kevin Durant, I think, is a fan. Durant's manager, Rich Kleiman's a big fan. So there are reasons to believe that Mark will get interviews with the Nets.
Ian, is this Knick job Tibbs to lose?
I have been told that, for weeks now. I haven't heard anything that leads me to believe otherwise. There's still hurdles to get over here. Even if you're through the interview process, you still have to negotiate a contract, and then you still bring the coach to meet with the owner. The owner is, obviously a final sign off, and so we're not there yet. But I haven't heard anything to lead me to believe that Tibbs is not the odds-on favorite. And I think Kenny Atkinson had legit internal support, but all along here it has been Thibodeau's gig to lose.
Now, Ian, we're talking to Ian Begley, basketball analyst for SNY on Carlin, Hardesty for Carlin here on 98.7 ESPN. Ian, we know, the room, the reputation that Tom Thibodeau has. Everybody's read about it. Everybody knows you potentially have a young basketball team here. And the rumor is around that he doesn't do well with young players. See what happened in Minnesota, and then with the veteran, Derrick Rose was complaining about practicing in Chicago. I also know that he had circled the NBA and watched other coaches and how they ran their programs and their practices. Are we looking possibly, if he is the new head coach of the Knicks, is he going to be a different Tom Thibodeau than what we've known him to be?
I think there will be tweaks. I think there will be, different ways that he approaches practice, different ways that maybe he approaches minutes, maybe different ways that he collaborates with different parts of the organization because of his past experiences. He was open about talking about what he'd learned from those visits that you referenced, particularly to the Clippers and Doc Rivers, and how the Clippers handled practices, sitting veterans or giving veterans a later day, having the younger guys go, between games in those practice days. And I think that you will see some modifications. And with regards to what happened in Chicago, the reports were that he clashed with the front office. I don't think that's going to be an issue in New York because of his relationship with Leon Rose, his relationship with William Wesley, Worldwide West. These are long-standing relationships. So I don't think there's going to be the friction there that you saw in Chicago. And with Minnesota, he was the president and the head coach in New York. If he gets hired, he's just going to be the head coach. He's not going to be dealing with the duties of a GM president. So that's a different scenario as well.
Ian, What path do you think, from your reporting, this Knick team is going to take as far as personnel? Is it going to be predominantly through the draft, or because Leon Rose is here, because, as you mentioned, the World Wide West is here, are they going to try again to dip into the free agent market, which, Ian, let's face it, it's not been very good for them.
Yeah, it hasn't been good for them. It really hasn't. And there's not a killer class this offseason. I keep wanting to say this summer, but it's not going to be this summer.
Yeah,
this
really.
offseason. So I think the two routes you're going to see are through the draft, and then you're going to see the Knicks maybe throwing big money but short-term money at veteran free agents, or pursuing, young talented players via trade, or maybe a veteran player via trade. So I think that if Tom Thibodeau is the coach, I think you're going to see a heavy veteran presence on the roster. It's not like they're going to roll the balls out and have a bunch of 19, 20, 21-year-olds in the rotation. I think you're going to see veterans getting minutes on this next Knick team if Thibodeau is the coach. And even if he's not, I do think that you're more likely to see a decent amount of veterans on the roster than like a Philadelphia situation a few years ago, where you're just putting together young players and having them learn on the fly.
Okay, let's stop it right there, because that's what I want to get into. Right? We're assuming that this is Tom Thibodeau that's going to be the coach. That was Ian Begley, ladies and gentlemen. All right, that was Ian Begley. So you get a chance to make sure you go check out SNY TV, and he was, on the Hardesty podcast with Larry Hardesty for ESPN. So that was those two guys having a conversation, and you heard it. And I think we heard it before. He said, I think you're going to see a heavy veteran presence on the roster. It's not like they're going to roll the ball out and have a bunch of 19, 20, and 21-year-olds in the rotation. I want to get your take on that, guys. I want to know, how do you feel about that statement? Ian Begley is one of those guys who, in my opinion, is plugged in. He's one of the guys that I trust to get this information. As far as sources are concerned, he's one of the guys that I really do trust. Be a heavy veteran presence, not a bunch of kids being rolled, just being thrown out there to play ball. How do you feel about that statement? And listen, if Tom Thibodeau is the coach, I do believe that's exactly what we're going to see on the floor. How do you feel about it, Nate?
I mean, honestly, man, I'm okay with it because we want to win. We got to win. We've gone through the last 2 or 3 years. Honestly, you could argue maybe 10 years of just turmoil with this team. It's time to start winning. If you want to bring in, free agents, if you want to make this more of a destination for players to want to come to, you got to win no matter what. And I could see them going with vets because I hope and pray that it's a earn your role type of situation, where if he puts a vet in front of the young guy, it's the young guy's job to earn that spot, which is what we hope Fizdale would do. That eat what you kill stuff, which we never really saw. He played more favorites. So I'm hoping Thibodeau, that's his mentality, is like, hey, these young guys are going to have to earn their spots, whether that means playing defense or whether that means, being offensively able to shoot. Those are probably the biggest issues the Knicks have. But I'm all for it, man. I think with a new coach, you gotta get some wins under your belt. You gotta build that confidence. If you just throw a bunch of young people out there, like which everybody wants to see, we're gonna lose a lot of games again. I don't know if these guys are ready to take that next step just by the young guys. But who the vets are gonna be? That's the question. Are we gonna go more the second tier free agents, and are we gonna bring in some 1-year deals again? It's going to be interesting to see what vets they're talking about, because almost all our vets are all set to leave. So, are we talking about a whole influx of vets? That's my question is, what are you talking about? Are you talking about like making a splash in free agency? Are you talking about maybe getting some second tier guys, maybe 1-year deals? I don't know. That'd be my question.
It sounds to me like it's going to be sounds to me, if you're talking about vets, some of it sounds similar to what they did last year.
Yeah, 1-year deals.
Short deals. Brought in veterans like Taj Gibson. I mean, if you want to consider Elfrid Payton a vet, I guess you can consider Elfrid Payton a vet, because of the years that he's been in the league. Bobby Portis is not really a vet. I don't know. I guess he's mid vet, whatever you want to call him. Julius Randle was kind of in that same situation with Bobby Portis, a mid vet. I guess Elfrid Payton is kind of there too. So if you're talking about true vets, Wayne Ellington, Taj Gibson, Reggie Bullock, Marcus Morris, those were vets. Those were true enough vets. You know what I'm saying? They got stripes on their arms. The other guys are still, figuring some things out. I mean, it's kind of what they did last year. What do you think about that, Andy?
Well, for me, if they sign quality guys, I won't have a problem with that. But if Tibbs is going to roll out Elfrid Payton, Wayne Ellington, Reggie Bullock, Julius Randle, and Taj Gibson, I don't think I can see that going through the whole season, man. That's going to be awful. But, I think, the first coach's priority should be looking at the squad and really understanding the players, and not looking only at their development, but at the best way to, go further with the team. So let's see who we get in the draft, but we're going to have, a rookie, and that's going to be a high pick. Probably should be playing, big minutes, maybe not even the, starting, right? But at least big minutes. RJ, well, I'm guessing, I think you got to start.
RJ's going to start. He has to start.
Yeah. So I'm guess Tibbs going to accept one rookie at least. Maybe not a rookie, like a sophomore, right? And, I think Mitch might be getting quality minutes as well. I don't know who's going to be the 3 or who's going to be the 4. I'm guessing Randall, if he's going to stay. I don't think Tibbs can, come in and put Randall on the bench, put RJ on the bench and stuff like that. I don't think that's going to work. But if we sign quality guys, for example, if we trade for Chris Paul, right? You can roll with Chris Paul and you can then maybe plug in a couple of young guys or, sign solid vets. But if I would be Leon Rose, I would go with signing, if we're going to sign those quality vets for 1-year deals, I would go like for guys over 34. That the young guys won't feel hurted and their career is going to be damaged by a guy like we're going to sign a guy like that's in his prime, right? So he's going to block minutes for the couple of next seasons, just maybe a season, or just let him roll into the season and see what's going to happen then.
Yeah, I feel like if you bring it, well, let me get to Evergreen. If you're in position to talk. How do you feel about those statements, man?
Yeah. So I'm a little frustrated by it. Can y'all hear me good?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, so I'm a little frustrated by it because I don't want to repeat exactly what we did last time. You know what I mean? Like we just went down this road last year of super veteran heavy presence. And I feel like, again, last season, I was a guy that was saying, like, if we had an 18-game season of wins, that we were successful, and we got to 22, 23. So I'm looking at a slow and steady grinding process with a few veterans that are here, maybe 5 vets at the most that are here to really support the young guys and give them everything that they need and help them what they need to be successful. I don't want to see an entire team full of vets, because I don't want to see an entire team full of vets that end up leaving after 2 years or after a year, and now we're stuck where we were with all the rookies again. Like I want a team. I want a slow and steady build team that was almost like similar to like that Clippers team with Darius Miles on it, like with all those young dudes that were running up and down the court. Like I want a slow and steady grind and build young team that will want to stay here for the pride of New York City and really want to play for the team and not, I don't know. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to hear. Like, you completely understand where the team is coming from, where the organization is coming from, but we haven't been successful in doing that at all. Like, the last time we were successful at doing that was under Woodson, right? Like, and then when we bring all these other vets in, like, they don't pan out or we get rid of them. Same thing with the young guys. So I want to stay the course. You know what I mean? Whatever the course was that was built, or the idea that was built under Mills and Perry with, trying to build the team through the draft, I want to do that. If we're getting ready to go through this whole rinse, wash, and repeat thing that we just did last year with signing a whole bunch of vets, I don't think that's going to work. Like, I feel like at a max we should have 5 vets, one from each position, that can really mentor the young guys that they have under their belt right now. The young guys at small forward. Who's going to be who is going to be the guy to mentor Kevin Knox? Who from the small forward or power forward position is going to give Kevin Knox what he needs to be successful if we intend on keeping him? Who is going to be the guy that's going to give Mitchell Robinson the tools that he needs at the 5 to be successful? And the same thing at the 1. If we plan on staying here with Frank and DSJ, or going into the draft, who is going to be that point guard that's going to give us that ability to have some stability with our youth, even after they end up leaving? And I personally don't think that, grabbing a whole bunch of new people again from having 9 brand new dudes on the team from last season, I don't think that that's the right formula, and doing it again, because then you got Frank Ntilikina who's under a whole new set of leadership again. You got DSJ who's under his 5th set of leadership since he's been in high school. You have all of these new people that just keep coming in and keep getting recycled and keep getting flushed out, and it's getting ready to happen again. Not to say that I wanted Bobby Portis to stay and I wanted Ellington to stay and I want, Elfrid Payton to stay and all those guys. But it's like, can we show some bit of continuity? Is the continuity going to start now? Because we thought it was going to start last season.
Yeah.
And it clearly hasn't started yet.
Well, and I mean, the thing is, with the way the contracts are structured, no matter what happens, unless you decide to keep those players, no matter what happens, you're going to end up with 9 new roster spots. Right.
And the problem is we don't want to take on big contracts. So it's going to have to be 1-year deals.
Right. So you're going to take on 9 new roster spots. I said it back then. I'm going to say it again now. I felt like the thought process was correct. It wasn't executed well throughout, but I thought I felt like the thought process was correct, because you have guys, it's hard to say who is a vet and not a vet sometimes, right? Julius Randle's 25 years old. People could say he's a vet because he's been in the league for 5 years. Some people would say he's only 25 years old. A vet, you're looking at 20, 28, 29, 30 years old. That's been in the league for a while and been through some things in the league. Elfrid Payton in the same boat. Bobby Portis in the same boat. Like, these guys are really kind of young players. You know what I'm saying? When you talk about true vets, Marcus Morris was a true vet, Wayne Ellington, Taj Gibson, like, those guys are your vets, right? I think, they're going to go that route. And if you have Tom Thibodeau, I think, they're definitely going to go that route and bringing in vets. But I think you can bring in vets, and I seen someone in the chat, or Raw Hebrew, thank you for the super chat. He said you can't go for the playoffs and try to rebuild at the same time, but you can try to be competitive at the same time that you're rebuilding, I think. And having good veterans as part of rebuilding, you just got to make sure that you got the right mix so that your young guys are being taught. You know what I'm saying? Because I think the idea is that, and I hear what Evergreen is saying, right? You bring in a bunch of vets that's hogging up the playing time, and then they leave, and then your young guys haven't really gotten to the point that they needed to get to maintain the team on their own. I think the idea is that you can bring in vets in certain areas, and in certain positions that have certain roles that will help the young guys to come along. And then when they leave, those guys are ready to take the mantle on their own. It's not easy to do. That's why winning a championship in the NBA is so prized, because it's very hard. And to build it from the ground up is even tougher. I think, when you talk about the strategy that they're looking at, I think there are two things that really have to be, well, more than two things, three things that you really got to look at, and probably more than that. But obviously the point guard position. You might have a young point guard in the draft, but you need somebody who can really, really delve out, who can really distribute the duties on the team, on the floor. And I'm not just talking about the coach distributing the duties, but a point guard that can really distribute the duties, demand the respect, and say, this is what's happening on this play right now. This is what's happening. I don't care what anybody else thinks. I am the leader on the floor. We need that. A bona fide leader on the floor. Not one that's figuring out how to be a leader. Not one that just wants to be a leader. A bona fide leader out there on the floor to put everybody in their position, put players in check when they need to be put in check. And then that goes into the next thing. Julius Randle's going to be on the team. He's a talented player, right? He has skill, but he has to be corralled. And I think if you have the right kind of leader on the floor, you can corral him. If you're not going to have the right kind of leader to corral Julius Randle, then you're not going to get from him what you expect or thought you might get from him. It's almost like the same thing with Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony had his best years when he was with Chauncey Billups, when he was with Jason Kidd. He had his best years because he had a point guard that he respected, a point guard that wasn't afraid to look. Carmelo Anthony is kind of a quiet dude anyway, but so he's like a silent locker room assassin or something like that. So a point guard that's not afraid to get in his face, a point guard that he respects, a point guard that's going to move him out the way, do whatever you need to do to make sure that person stays in check. Julius Randle needs that. If you're not going to provide that, then your best bet is to move on from him, because you're not doing yourself or him any good. You know what I mean? Where do you find that guy? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? That's probably going to be a veteran guy. You know what I'm saying? And then you need a guy like one or two guys. Does RJ need a mentor? I don't know. RJ kind of got it. He's got it. I don't know if he needs a mentor. I see, posts out there about, Melo would be a great mentor for RJ. I don't know if RJ needs a mentor. Kevin Knox needs a mentor. Mitchell Robinson needs a mentor. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if RJ needs a mentor. What do you think, Andy, about what I just said?
I agree with you. Who I think RJ needs? RJ needs a body to practice shooting with. So they can just, be on the, off the training facility, and then shoot after hours with a guy that he can hang with and, check that shooting. And that's the only thing RJ is going to need the first couple of seasons, man. I think he's an alpha, but he knows his role on the team. He's not going to be, corralling, Julius Randle on the court. They can have, maybe not fights, but, words after, going to the locker room or, even after practices. But he's not going to cause problems, PR problems even on the court for the Knicks. I think he's that savvy. So,
yeah. So if you're gonna have RJ, Mitch, Frank, Randall, I think you've got to have a veteran point guard that is a good leader out there on the floor. I think that's going to be a key. Listen, I still believe that if we had a veteran point guard presence, and I'm not talking about Elfrid Payton, but a real veteran point guard presence this year, this team, I'm not saying we would have been in the playoffs, but this team would have looked way different. I really do feel that. So I guess, we're going to see what the roster construction is like. They brought in guys like Sean McLean. Andy, I didn't get the chance to hear from you or Evergreen on what you think on this guy, Sean McLean, who is a basketball analyst. Tom Thibodeau, if he's hired, he's more of the, I see what guys can do. That's what I'm going with. Sean McLean, obviously he's in the front office, may not even have a lot of contact with Tom Thibodeau. He's an analyst type of a guy, right? And knows how to set up systems and data and do all those type of things. What do you think this guy's role is going to be? And what do you think his role is going to be? And we're going to swing back around to Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah, you know what? If Tibbs is going to be the coach, I think this guy is going to be more working for the future of the Knicks. So he's going to be looking out for players that might fit our system, even with Tibbs or with anyone else. But I would see him having a bigger role when we pick a coach like Kenny Atkinson or even Woody or even Jason Kidd. I don't, like you said, I think Tibbs is a guy that if you show me things in practice and in games with smaller minutes, you're going to get more playing time. I don't think he's going to, see, okay, you got higher percentage rebounding the ball when you're coming from the left side. I'm going to try to, convert plays, you coming in from the left side. I think if you're going to be playing good, you're going to be playing minutes. It's not going to be happening in the practices or in the games. You're not going to get a burn, right? So I don't think those analytics numbers are going to work for Thibs. But he might change his perception of the analytics a little bit, and maybe he's going to take it in account. But I don't think it's going to be that much big of a thing for Thibs.
Yeah. Let me get to this caller real quick. Caller, what's going on, man? What's poppin'?
What's going on, Sim? The artist formerly known as Worldwide, man. I got to come up with a new name.
Yeah, man. You're gonna have to do that, man. People gonna think Worldwide West is calling into the show and giving out secrets. You know what I'm saying?
The funny thing is though, before ever Worldwide West came on the scene, I had that name since high school. I graduated high school in 2003. I had that name since when the World Wide Web came out. But that's another story. Yo, last night's show, that was fire, bro. Last night's show was explosive. It was fire. I really appreciated everybody's differences in opinions. That show was lit, for real.
Appreciate it, man. It was definitely a crazy show. Great conversation, though. You know what I'm saying? It was a great conversation all the way around.
Sometimes conversations just let it flow and it might go somewhere else. But I just want to say one thing pertaining to that, and I'm going to get back to the Knicks. I work in a predominantly female industry, right? It's nursing or whatever. So I had experienced something that I never thought I would experience just recently, that I was on the other end of being sexually harassed. And I had to go to human resource and complain. And I had to walk into work and feel completely uncomfortable. Even after I made the complaint, other women who somehow found out were like, oh, she should have never got fired. And you know what I mean? So you got to be careful, because I would have never imagined how it could feel. But when the shoe's on the other foot, and then you coming into your place of work where you're supposed to get money and you're feeling completely uncomfortable, that's a wild feeling, So
yeah, I can imagine.
But anyway, back to the Knicks. So now, I feel I'm not going to take the word of the reporter, even though Begley is very credible. I'm not going to go overboard and get nervous about us signing a bunch of over the hill veterans. I know Tony Crow takes credit for being the first one to mention Chris Paul, but I was the first one to mention Chris Paul. That's neither here nor I'm telling you, I was.
No, I remember you mentioning Chris Paul too. I remember that.
Okay, I'm glad you could vouch for me. And so now a veteran like Chris Paul, I think you have to go get Chris Paul. I think you have to, unless you end up with the number 1 overall pick in the draft, and even then, I'm not opposed to getting Chris Paul. But if we have the 6th pick in the draft and we're going to draft Halliburton or one of these other guys, Chris Paul, you need a floor general, like you were saying, to tell people, yo, get there, get here, and not just a veteran who has a proven track record on the floor.
Yes.
And still has a skill set. You know what I mean? So I think that's definitely essential, right? I also think Mitch, like you said, he definitely needs a vet because he responds to veteran leadership.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's a coachable player and he listens. You know, when you have you've seen how his game improved under DeAndre Jordan. You've seen how, you know, under the tutelage of Taj Gibson, he cleaned up certain areas of his game as the season progressed. And that's him being receptive to veteran leadership. As far as Kevin Knox, I don't know if Carmelo, as a matter of fact, I don't think Carmelo Anthony is the right veteran for Kevin Knox. It's almost the same situation with Mook Morris. They're so much better than Kevin Knox right now that they're going to get the bulk of the minutes, right, and it's going to stand his progression on the court. You know, right. I just think you need somebody who's maybe more of a veteran, who's not looking to play as much as minutes, who's more of a defender, come in the game to play defense, hit threes, but be able to mentor Kevin Knox and have his game progress, because I know we disagree on this, and you can't just give a player minutes, but for a player to go from playing 30-plus minutes in 1 year in their rookie season to playing 12 minutes the next year, it's like, you know, you're moving backwards as an organization.
And that'll hurt the player's confidence, too.
Right, you know, and that could mess you up for years. So, you know, you got to really, if you make an investment in a player, you can't just throw him to the sideline. Like, I feel like what they did was they drafted R.J. Barrett, and they said, oh, this is that dude. So all the attention and everything that Kevin Knox was getting the year before, he saw Barrett getting it. And he's human, man. He's a 19-year-old kid. I think back to when I was 19, playing against guys who was 26. I used to view 26, 30 as super old. You know, you can lose your confidence. You can get lost in the sauce. And you do. Some players need to be coddled more than others. But every organization has to show that the player that they drafted, they have a vested interest in that player, right, you know, in his development. And I feel like at some point, Kevin Knox sensed it, felt it, that they were no longer fully invested in him, and you just got to survive this season and, like, you're on your own type situation instead of them helping him along more. He did a lot to cause his demise too, but, you know, so I feel you have to be careful with the veterans that you select on this team. That's going to be, you know, very important. And like your boy Nicholas said, I know his name ain't Nicholas, but that's what they were calling. You know, you don't want to get a group of veterans like we did in 2012, win 54 games, 7 or 6 of those guys are off the team. Now you're scrambling to replace them, and you're not going to get back the same chemistry, or certain guys retire, or the following year you got guys are injured. You know what I mean? So you do want to build the team with youth, and at the same time veteran leadership who's going to help this youth develop, you know? So you have to do two things at once. You have to. So, you know, I personally, if it were me, I would go with Chris Paul. I think that he can be acquired for a reasonable price. You know, I'm gonna go with Davis Bertans because he can shoot that three. You know, and he's not going to be as expensive as a Gallinari might be. You know, I'm gonna look to trade Julius Randle. I'm gonna look at bringing back Mook perhaps, but he's gonna play the backup 4. You know, and not the 3. I don't have all the answers for the roster construction right now, to be honest with you, but I just feel what I'm trying to convey is that you need a mix of youth and veterans, but you don't need veterans who are, you know, not good enough to help you win, but good enough to take minutes away from the veterans. I mean, from the young guys, because then you're not progressing anywhere as a franchise.
Right.
And I heard a little rumor that Mark Jackson all but got the Brooklyn job.
Word.
So
yeah. And see, I'm not as quick to move on from Randle if we can get someone like a Chris Paul, because I really think Chris Paul can do wonders with Julius Randle out there, and helping him to corral his game and utilize his talent. I feel like he would respond to someone like Chris Paul. If you're not gonna have a veteran point guard like a Chris Paul, then I think you probably should move on, because a rookie and a young point guard is not going to get it done with Julius Randle, in my opinion. You know, you're doing him a disservice. You're doing the team a big disservice. But if you get Chris Paul, I think it could work.
I don't doubt it. He played well with David West, pick and roll player similar to Chris Paul. And I do think that Julius Randle would respond to Coach Tibbs because, just on face value, Julius Randle does have the foundation of being a good passer, right? He can't pass well out of the low post, but he can pass better out of the high post. And you could put him into the same situations that you had Joakim Noah in and him making decisions. And then if nobody's, covered him up, then he could dive to the basket for a layup. But as far as having him bring the ball down court, we spoke about this early in the season last year. They put him in a position to fail.
That was craziness. That was craziness.
Pure insanity. They put him in a position to fail.
Yeah.
So I'm just reviewing the games. I have probably 24 games taped. That's all I could have stomached. And I'm watching them over and over. And I'm saying, listen, like you said, Julius Randle does have a skill set. He does have the ability to be a contributor on a good team. I personally feel like his role as a sixth man would be so much more suited for him, because then he can actually they can even use him as a primary scorer, as far as the second unit is concerned. That would be but you'd have to have a veteran coach to have him accept that role,
exactly.
Especially if you're going to have a younger dude at the power forward, him coming off the bench.
Right.
You're going to a guy like Tibbs, I think he'll listen to somebody like him, suggesting that as opposed to, one of these younger, unproven coaches. So, I'm with you 100%. We need Chris Paul, and we need a few vets, and we don't want to overdo it. We still want to develop the young talent, and you want whatever point guard you get in this draft to be able to develop, not to Chris Paul leave in 2 years, and now we starting from scratch. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, no doubt about it. Hey, Wes, I appreciate the call, man.
All day, man. No problem, man.
Yeah. All right. Talk to you later, man. Peace.
See.
And he talked about having the right kind of veteran for Kevin Knox. I think that guy could have been, obviously it's not going to be now. I think that guy could have been Vince Carter. Vince Carter probably would have been perfect for Kevin Knox. Right?
Sim, I was gonna say a couple of names of veterans that I would sign for even more than a vet's minimum just for them to run with the team. And the first name was Vince Carter. I don't know. The second would be probably a Ray Allen type of guy. He doesn't even have to suit up. Just practice with the guys.
Right.
If we had a guy like Ray Allen, Vince Carter, and stuff like that, they would just be traveling with the team, telling the guys what to do off the court so they don't get in trouble. On the court, they don't have to even play in games. Just sit behind the bench with the guy and say, okay, you see that? That's why he made the mistake. You got to do it this way or that way. That would be perfect thing for a vet that doesn't need minutes, doesn't take minutes, so the rookies won't be afraid of losing their job, but they also will feel the respect and care for what the vets are trying to teach them. That's what makes the chemistry perfect for the teams. Of course, you're gonna have not only that's why I said guys over 35 would be perfect for the Knicks, right? And maybe Tibbs wouldn't have to playing them minutes in the game, so the young guys still will be playing more. But those kind of guys will be perfect.
Yeah. So before I switch over to Sportscaster, because I'm about to switch over in a minute. Well, I'm already on Sportscaster, solely on Sportscaster, but we still got a couple more minutes here on YouTube. I want to know, assuming that it's Tom Thibodeau, right? Assuming that it's Tom Thibodeau, what players on this team do you think will respond to Tom Thibodeau? Do you think that he would, I don't want to say take a liking to, but are his kind of players? Players that we already have that would be his kind of players. What do you think?
I think first one is going to be RJ, then Frank, then Mitch. And that's going to be one of the core, not only for Tibbs, but mainly for Tibbs. Actually, I'm not sure about Randall. It might go dramatically both ways. He might respond really good, or it might be a disaster, and he's going to be the first candidate to be traded, man. Because if Tibbs is going to rub him bad on defense, and he's not going to like it, that might be a problem. But I hope it's going to work out fine. But I think with Randall, it's more of a situation like you said, that he needs a vet point guard like Melo had with Chauncey Billups and stuff like that, and he can work better. If you're laying all your eggs in Randall's basket, that's a problem. But we saw what happened, so I'm not gonna go for it there. Also, I think Reggie Bullock, I think Ellington is a good guy that if they're here or not here, I think they're gonna be Tibbs guys that are gonna play. Of course, Taj Gibson if he's gonna stay. Those guys are gonna be good. I don't know about Iggy because he's a young guy. We didn't see him. I don't know, maybe 15 minutes for the whole season. So I don't know how he's gonna work out, and we don't know him more mentally and how he responds on the court. I hope he will. You know what? Even going further, when everyone says that we want LaMelo. I think LaMelo might be a crash with Tibbs as well. That might not pan out, man. I don't see Tibbs looking for, at LaMelo taking those wild shots and not playing defense, man. that might be really bad. But let's leave that for sportscaster.
Yeah, that's with Randall, I think you're exactly right. It could be either way, right? It could be that he responds really well. And the thing about Randall, like defensively, he has the ability. He has all the ability.
Yeah, the potential, right?
He's just got to want to do it on every single play, right? Now, so then the question, like you said, is does he respond to a coach who is going to demand that he does it on every single play and sit him if he doesn't? Or is he going to, pout? You know what I'm saying? That's what, which way is it going to go? And I don't know if it's going to be anywhere in the middle with him. I think it's going to be one way or the other.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And can he respond to a coach that's going to, if Tom Thibodeau is going to, be the coach that he is, that's going to come in and, ride him and try to push him to get the best out of himself. Tom Thibodeau could be the guy for him. But listen, if you're going to do it, you got to make sure you got that veteran point guard there. That can and that guy that can communicate between the players and the team. And I think a guy like Coach Woody could be a nice in between assistant that can,
soften the blow for Randall.
Yeah. I think what do you think? Like, what players do you think Tom Thibodeau would, assuming it's Tom Thibodeau, that he's going to take a liking to, players that will respond to Tom Thibodeau?
So wait, who are you talking about?
Light.
Me?
Going to Light.
Light.
Well,
for me, you good, Nate. I think I agree with a lot of what my man was just saying. I'm curious if it is Tibbs, if he ends up holding on to Taj, based on him coming when he went to Minnesota. He tried to do Bulls 2.0, and now he's coming to New York, and we have a former Bull in Taj Gibson. I'm really intrigued whether he's going to turn him into our new Lance Thomas.
Right.
If he's going to use him as a player coach, which is I think a role he's fit for. And I think that's the most glaring thing. I agree that Randall could be either way. I think Randall's like that regardless of who we get. To be honest with you, he's kind of at that point in his career. When they tell Dylan, this is when you either make the band or you make the band.
Right.
So he's at that crossroad right now. Outside of that, the obvious picks are defensive-minded guys like Frank. Those are obvious picks. But I'm curious if he's turning over a new leaf. So I'm wondering. The problem is we don't really have any offensively dominant players right now, outside of maybe RJ, depending on how he improves. So I think for the most part, our team is very malleable, and he's going to pick up whoever's willing to work hard, more so than anything else. So obviously guys like RJ are going to be a favorite of his. I worry about people like Knox who have problems showing the intensity. I really worry for him probably more than anybody else. Outside of that, I think he'll like Portis. If they decide to keep Portis, I think he'll like Taj. I think the veteran guys are going to be like his top people. I think if it is Tibbs, we're going to see a lot of what we saw last year, where vets are playing ahead of young guys, and I feel like that's going to be a problem if we get Tibbs.
Did Tibbs ever coach Portis?
No, I don't think so. Portis was after Tibbs.
Wasn't it last year?
But how long was Portis in Chicago?
2 years, 3 years.
Okay.
I feel like he got dealt when he was still in his rookie contract after punching old boy.
Yeah. I think he was still in his rookie contract. But yeah, he probably will like Bobby Portis. I don't know if the Knicks are going to keep Bobby Portis around because of his contract.
Right.
They'd have to pay him $15 million this year. I don't
He
know.
ain't worth that.
Yeah, if he was on an $8 million contract or something like that, but $15 million, I don't think they're going to pay him $15 million.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, I kind of like Portis. Like, I just for the intensity. Like, we need a Garnett type dude. That dude that's just out there giving you 100 all the time and don't give a damn. And we're kind of missing that. We got a lot of guys who get small when things get rough.
Mm-hmm. True. Yeah. So Bobby Portis came the season after Tom Thibodeau left the Bulls.
Yeah.
Yep. The season
that's what
after.
I thought.
Came the season after.
That's what I thought. So I mean, I still think Portis fits his mold, though, just from an intensity standpoint.
And it made sense with what they were trying to do with Bobby Portis, right? Because Julius Randle can't really shoot. He's the 4. Mitchell Robinson can't shoot. He's the 5. So to have that guy that can play the 4 or the 5 who could come in for Randle and be the 4 while Mitchell Robinson runs to the basket, or come in for Mitchell Robinson, spread the floor while Randle posts, right? It made sense with what they were trying to do with Bobby Portis.
Yeah.
And they're gonna need another guy like that. Wes was talking about Davis Bertans. He's another guy that's like that. Maybe he can shoot it better than Bobby Portis.
Yeah. And see, it makes me sad because the answer to our problems decided he didn't want to play with us no more. There's one guy who would fit what we're talking about. I ain't gonna say no names because I don't want who's marked to show up.
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
There's one
right.
dude.
Yeah.
That would be if he would have stayed.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
If I say it one more time, who's Mark's gonna show up? So we're gonna just stop right there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he would have been that guy right there in the middle that could do either one. But
right. Yeah. And he wouldn't have been able to say I'm tired either, because we'd have been, RJ would have been doing more. He would have been able to just play the background like he's doing over there, wherever the hell he's at.
Right. You had Mark pulling his hair out.
Yeah,
I'm surprised he hasn't knocked to get in yet.
He coming. Don't worry. I'm gonna keep talking about it. He's gonna show up. First of all, Paul Zinkett. Like, all right, calm down, dude.
Right. Oh man.
You're killing me.
As far as a coaching staff, what kind of coaching staff do we got to put with him, with Tom Thibodeau? Because it's seeming like that's it. Ian Bailey's a reporter, so he doesn't have any definite information, but his sources are usually pretty good. He's usually a pretty good source, and from what he said, he hasn't heard. I mean, Kenny Atkinson. We thought Kenny Atkinson was going to be right there in the mix. He hadn't really heard much about Kenny Atkinson. I don't even know if he's had an interview. We heard about Mike Woodson having an interview. Some of these other guys who have only been assistants throughout their career. I feel like with who I've seen interviews with, besides Jason Kidd, you're setting up the assistant coaches for Tom Thibodeau. That's what I feel like. Tom Thibodeau, Mike Woodson. You had the one guy from Chicago, I forgot his name, Chris Fleming, who, he's really only been an assistant. It feels like maybe you're setting up Tom Thibodeau and his assistants. What do you think, Andy? Who would you bring in, or who do you think Tom Thibodeau would choose as his assistant coaches?
Yeah, exactly like you said. You know what? I was even thinking about the Ime Udoka guy from the Spurs. I'm thinking if he is in a position to go straight after a head coaching job, or just to move out of the Spurs organization so he can have a bigger chance to take over a team after being a lead assistant? I was thinking about it because I didn't think he's a head coaching candidate at this point. I was thinking in the Spurs organization they're going to have someone before him if Pop retires, right? So I'm thinking for his career path, he would choose another organization as an assistant, maybe as a lead assistant, and then try to, skip over. So taking a job with Tibbs might be the way to go for him even.
Yeah. I'm hoping, and this is what Ralph Petito said, Ime Udoka could be a good lead assistant for Tibbs. Look, I think that, you're going to need the guy. He's a screamer, right? Tibbs is a screamer. Look, listen, you guys know I coach AAU, right? And there's this team from Boston, that's sponsored by Adidas. Great team. They're a great team, but their coach, you talk about a screamer. And he remind me of Tom Thibodeau a little bit. Andy, when I tell you this guy, his team would be on offense, he's screaming every single play. And he's standing 5 feet out onto the court. Every single play. His team is down at the other end of the court. He's out by half court almost. Yelling, screaming, face turning red, calling this kid idiots and all kinds of stuff. I'm looking at him like, yo, what's going on with this dude? I don't want to say the name of the AAU team, and put them out there like that. But you can look it up. A huge AAU team from Boston. You know what I mean? And they're really, really good. But crazy, face red as an apple. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like Tom Thibodeau.
Yo, so I played for a coach like that too, man. When we were on defense, he was like in the stands and going like, hands up. He was crazy. And when we were going to the championship games, this like the semifinals and stuff like that, they had a newspaper for the second day, right? And he was on the front, page, like in his stands, and they were, everybody was laughing at the guy, but he was like working with us on the court, man. So.
Yeah, and that's Tibbs. So you're gonna need somebody that can go out there and kind of smooth things over for Tibbs, and let Tibbs be the bad guy, and then that coach come in and put his arm around his shoulders. I thought with David Fizdale it was opposite, and that's the wrong way in my opinion. With David Fizdale, I felt like he wanted to be the good guy while he sent Craig, he sent other people out there to tell players they're not going to start. You know what I'm saying? Or do the discipline. And that's not the way it should go, right? Because when it all comes down to it, you got to listen to the head coach. That's the guy that's, sets the standards. And if your head coach is the guy that is being buddy, when it comes time for him to set the standards, people are going to laugh at him, So
nobody trying to hear that.
Yeah, right. You know what I mean? So I think, he's going to need a guy that can kind of smooth things over when it's necessary. I think Woodson could be a good guy like that, and I'm sure there's, plenty of other people out there. He's going to have his choice. But look, we're heading over to Sportscaster, ladies and gentlemen. Straight up, just Sportscaster now. You guys know the routine. All right. And we're going to talk about what is your ideal offseason. And we're talking about your ideal offseason in the context of having Tom Thibodeau as the head coach of the New York Knicks. All right. So in the description, you can find the link to Sportscaster, and it's also here in the YouTube chat. So you guys click on this chat, join us over here on Sportscaster. All right. I'm putting the link in there now, and I'm about to spam the YouTube chat. So to make sure you got the link. All right, so make sure that you hit that link. If you miss it, join us on Sports. Go into the description and you can join us on Sportscaster. And we're going to talk about your ideal off season, right? Because the off season is coming up in a couple of months in October. Well, I guess this is the off season, but the free agency and the draft and all of that's coming up in October. So, we're going to talk about what's ideal. And big shout out to Mighty Knicks. Thank you for the super chat, my man. I appreciate you. All right. So, YouTube, I will see you over on Sportscaster. Make sure you get there. Let me do this real quick. Yeah, make sure you get there right now, YouTube. All right. I see you over on Sportscaster. And I am out.